Hey guys, today I'm going to be talking about how to care for your leopard gecko. So first of all, I'm just going to start off by talking about their enclosure, and then I'll go on to talking about feeding, handling and all that kind of good stuff. So you may be wondering, if you're a first time owner, what do you keep a leopard gecko in? The main choice for what people keep their geckos in is called a vivarium, which is just this, what you can see now. So this needs to be well ventilated, so you can see the ventilation strips there, and at least 1.5 feet long. I'm just talking about if you're keeping one gecko. So if you're keeping two, obviously it needs to be 3 foot, and so on. Just keep adding 1.5 feet on for each gecko. They don't require much space. As you can tell, this is only about 1 foot and almost 2 foot long for one gecko, so they don't require much space at all. Which is one of the good things that attracted me to leopard geckos and buying them, because unlike other lizards, they're very small, only growing up to a maximum size of 8 centimeters or 8 inches, sorry. For just a standard leopard gecko, which is pretty good, I would say. One thing they do require is heating. Now you have two options really for providing your gecko with heat. You can either use a heat mat, like what I use, or a heat lamp. So the advantages of using a heat mat are it stimulates the actual process of how they get heat in the wild. So they get heat from their belly, so obviously the heat mat is underneath them, so again warming up their belly, like what would happen in the wild. So yeah, I'd stick to the heat mat, and that needs to cover at least 1/3 to 1/2 of the vivarium, so they can thermoregulate from warm to cold sides. As I mentioned, you can also use a heat lamp, which I don't recommend using personally, because it's more of a fire hazard and it's just not like a natural process that they would do in the wild. But if you are interested in using a heat lamp, basically it's just a light that shines down and heats them up from above. Pretty self-explanatory really, but anyway. So you need to keep the tank heated on the warm side around 30 to 35 degrees. So as you can see, I keep mine around 34 degrees, powered with a Zoomed thermometer. So try and make sure you get digital thermometers, because they're always more accurate, and sometimes ones that you can put inside the tank can be tens of degrees out. To reduce fire risks, I recommend using a thermostat, which basically you set it to the heat you want and it will control it, instead of just leaving the heat mat plugged in and then not knowing what heat it can go to. So next thing I'm talking about is substrate. There's a variety of options, but also warnings about substrates for leopard geckos. Many people have been known to keep their geckos on sand, which is I strongly don't recommend getting, because basically any loose substrate such as sand, wood chips can actually impact and kill your leopard gecko from impaction, obviously. So please stay away from loose substrates. If you're getting from a pet shop, they probably will tell you to keep it on sand, like they would in the desert, or wood chips, but please don't. It's really not safe, as you've probably heard from other videos. So I don't really want to go into much detail, but if you can research that yourself, so just impaction. So always stick to substrates that are solid and nothing that the gecko can, chew on or ingest. So as you can see, I'm using Reptar carpet for half of it and paper towel for the other half of the tank. So Reptar carpet is good because it's easy to clean, It looks quite good being green, you know, matches with the plants. So it's an overall nice substrate, but I also use paper towel because this is the side my leopard gecko likes to poop on. So when he poops, I can just lift the paper towel out, whichever one he's pooped on, and replace it, so it's easier that way. In that respect, if you're keeping hatched in leopard geckos, always keep them on damp paper towel, simply because it's just a lot easier, and it's just recommended by breeders, as you've probably already heard of in previous videos. But yeah, so you can also use liner or tile to other recommended substrates. It's just basically whatever you prefer. This is solely my advice, so I'm not saying anything's right or wrong. I'm just saying what I know. So next thing I'm going to be talking about is decor. So what you're going to need is hides for your leopard gecko. So you need at least one hide, which will need to go on the heat source. So for me, my gecko's in there now. It's on the heat mat. I just use the medium Exoterra hide. It's also recommended that you use a moist hide. So I'll just show you what. This is my moist hide. It's just got cocoa fibre in. And if you don't already know, basically a moist hide provides, when your gecko is shedding, it's much easier for it to shed because it's obviously moist in there and easy for them to scrape the shed off. So highly recommended. Most breeders only have a moist hide, if any hide, in their tubs. So always use a moist hide, especially around when the gecko is shedding. So moist hide, what you need to have in there is either damp paper towel, cocoa fibre, or sphagnum moss. They're the three main options. You can also see I've got a cooler hide, and it's just a bit of bark basically, and like a middle hide. So a variety of places where the gecko can go. They don't really like big spaces, big open spaces. Makes them feel scared. So get as many hides as you can. Make them feel nice and secure. I also have these like fake plastic plants just for decoration, and the gecko can also climb in them. But if you're keeping them in your bedroom, you want it to look nice. So they're more for your use, but they're also benefiting the gecko because it's another place for it to hide. Next thing I'll talk about is calcium. Now this is one of the most important parts of owning a leopard gecko. So this is a really essential product for leopard geckos. I used calcidust. So as you can see, it's a high quality calcium, and basically the gecko needs calcium because it's not getting no sunlight. So always have that available in the tank at once, and you don't really need to worry about it much. The gecko will just lick it up if he needs it, and just make sure they've got a good supply because it is essential for the growth of any leopard gecko. And I'm just going to touch on this disease that is quite, I wouldn't say common, but available, well, not available, but well known for leopard geckos to catch it. It's called MBD, metabolic bone disease, and that's what geckos get from lack of calcium. And it's a really horrible disease. I don't really want to talk about it much, but basically it makes all their joints and bones go all like squishy, and they can die from it it's a pretty fast killing disease. So watch out for that. Just make sure you've got calcium in there all the time, and you shouldn't really have any problems. I also use Nutribol, if I can just get it, which is a calcium balancer and vitamins, multivitamin thing. So another thing you need is vitamins. You just need to dust the food that you're feeding your leopard gecko with the vitamins. Another essential part of keeping a leopard gecko. So the vitamins and calcium are very essential with any gecko really. You need to make sure they have some sort of D3. If I can show you the bottle, you can see it says D3 there. Basically, that's what they need to absorb the calcium. Like a bearded dragon would get that from the sun, but obviously because the gecko isn't getting any sunlight, you need to provide a source of D3 so they can absorb the calcium for their bones. So what you need to do is just dust that over the food, and you don't really need to worry about it anymore. It's not something you need to be scared of. It's just something you need to know is necessary. So now I'm going to be talking about what to feed your leopard gecko. So as a staple, I would recommend using mealworms. They're very nutritious and good for your leopard gecko. As you can see, they don't fly or anything, or jump, so you can leave them in the bowl overnight. Unlike crickets and locusts and things like that. They are the breeder's choice, just simply because they're so easy to get hold of, cheap, but also effective. So yeah, I'd recommend using mealworms as a staple. I'd say feed 10 a day of mini mealworms for babies, and probably about 10 every other day for adults. So you can either what I do is you leave a bowl in the viv with the gecko, but also hand feed him as well, 10 every other day. One of the most important things when having a leopard gecko is gut loading the feeder insects. And most breeders say this is important is actually keeping the leopard gecko, because if you're not gut loading the insects, it's basically just like feeding them shells. So you can either gut load your insects with, standard vegetables, oatmeal, wheat, anything like that, or special formulated, things that are actually been made for the bugs. So as you can see, I use bug grub. You can read that description yourself. I purchased this from Pets at Home for £2.50, so it's very cheap if you're in the UK. I also use bug gel to provide a source of water for the bugs, because they need to keep hydrated, but they'll just drown in standard water. So with this gel, they can still keep hydrated, but don't drown. So yeah, I highly recommend using both these products. They're great. There's plenty of calcium brands and, gut loading brands out there. You don't have to just use these. This is just what I prefer to use. The last topic I'm really going to be talking about today is handling. Leopard geckos, once tame, usually like to be handled. I know mine does. So here you go. You shouldn't really be handling hatchling geckos, as basically what they could do is drop their tails. You've probably heard this like 1,000 times before, but I'll just quickly touch on it. Basically, if you pull on a gecko's tail or it gets scared or anything like that, it will actually drop its tail and regenerate a new one. Now, a gecko stores all its nutrition and fat in its tail, so you don't want to be pulling it off or anything, because that's where all the goodness from its food will be, and it takes around a month to grow back, so it'll be quite unhealthy and it's not a very nice experience for them. So yeah, Just watch out for the tail, don't pull it or anything, never pick it up by its tail. I really like to stress this because it's real subject I feel quite passionate about, because a lot of people, I've seen people do this for fun, and it's not nice at all for the gecko. Although it's quite painless, that's basically all their nutrition supply gone, so it's going to be quite a stressful time. So yeah, I can't stress it enough to not pull their tail. So when handling your gecko, you always want to scoop them up until they know you. You don't really want to pick them up from the top, but once they're used to you, they're fine, like my gecko, as you can see. Some may make noises at you, but just keep handling them nice and slowly for about 10 minutes a day, and they'll soon be used to you and let you stroke them like mine is now. So yeah, that's just a little touch on handling. I can make a separate video all about each sector of what I've been talking about today, like handling, feeding, if you request it. If not, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. I will get back to you within at least 24 hours. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed.